Have you ever felt like something essential is missing, even when everything looks perfectly in place on the outside? That subtle ache, that creeping sense that your days are full but your soul is starving? Carl Jung didn't see this as a crisis. He saw it as a call, a whisper from the self, the deep, authentic core of who you are, telling you it's time to come home. Before 40, Jung believed we live in service of adaptation. We construct careers, identities, relationships, entire lives shaped by expectation. We strive to be good children, ideal partners, impressive professionals. We master the art of being what the world wants. But the price of this adaptation is distance from our essence, our shadow, our truth. Jung described the first half of life as a necessary illusion. It's when we build the persona, the mask we wear to function in society. We need this mask to survive, but the longer we wear it, the more we forget it's a mask. By 40, the mask begins to crack. That fracture is not failure. It's an invitation. The beginning of the second half of life is not a decline. It is the opening act of your deepest evolution. It may come as restlessness, depression, or a quiet emptiness. It may look like burnout or a desire to walk away from everything you once worked for. Jung called this moment the threshold of individuation, the point where life stops being about what we achieve and starts being about who we truly are. So when something inside you starts whispering, "This can't be all there is," listen, it's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough, the beginning of the life that's actually yours. Until midlife, most people chase ideas of success that were handed to them. Degrees, salaries, admiration, security, all noble pursuits, but often pursued for the wrong reasons. According to Jung, the ego dominates this phase, and the ego wants applause. It wants certainty. It wants control. But the soul is not interested in applause. By the time we reach 40, something extraordinary begins to happen beneath the surface. The metrics of success stop satisfying. The applause feels hollow. And in the quiet of that disappointment, the true self begins to rise. You might find yourself questioning everything, your job, your relationships, even your beliefs. This inner revolt is not rebellion, it's realignment. It's your psyche recalibrating toward authenticity. Jung warned that many people ignore this shift. They double down on the old ways, chasing even harder what's no longer meaningful. But this only deepens the divide. The shadow grows, the anxiety thickens, the body starts to speak what the mouth cannot. Those who listen, however, discover something else. Not comfort, but depth. Not certainty, but clarity. They find that the second half of life is not about climbing higher, but digging deeper. It's not about becoming someone, but about unbecoming everything you're not. And in that shedding, the seeds of real peace are planted. Midlife crisis. We've all heard the term, usually with a smirk. A cliché involving sports cars, new lovers and reckless abandon. But Carl Jung saw something entirely different. He believed this moment was sacred. To Jung, midlife wasn't chaos, it was initiation, a portal into the soul. In this phase, we don't lose our minds. We meet them for the first time. We confront what we've denied, buried, repressed, the regrets, the unspoken grief, the unlived lives we carry inside us. These don't rise up to destroy us. They rise to free us. Jung called this confrontation the shadow encounter. It is the moment when the ego must bow. When we stop pretending that surface-level success is enough and begin the deeper, quieter journey into meaning. This passage isn't easy. Many resist it. They run, distract, numb. But those who walk through the fire come out changed, not with more trophies, but with more truth. To cross this threshold is to leave behind the chase for external approval and begin the path of internal integration. It's where life stops being a performance and starts becoming a pilgrimage. So no, midlife is not a crisis. It's your soul clearing its throat, and it's time you started listening. What if the life you built was never truly yours? Carl Jung believed that the first half of life is a stage where we learn how to wear the right masks. We become who we need to be to belong. We adapt, we impress, we perform, and slowly, without realizing, we lose contact with who we are underneath. This mask, the persona, is essential in youth. It helps us navigate the world, but by the time we reach 40, the mask becomes heavy. It starts to slip. What once protected us begins to suffocate us. Suddenly, the career we fought so hard for feels empty. The relationships we've maintained out of habit no longer resonate. We feel a quiet ache, a disconnection from the roles we've mastered. This is not failure. This is awakening. Jung explained that the collapse of the persona is a necessary step in the process of individuation. It's the moment we stop living as a character in someone else's script and begin to write our own. But shedding the persona is terrifying, because what's left when we take off the mask? Silence, vulnerability, uncertainty, and that's where the real journey begins. In the second half of life, Jung believed, we are summoned into the dark, not the darkness of evil, but the darkness of the unknown, the unacknowledged, unexplored parts of ourselves, the shadow. The shadow is everything we've hidden to survive, the anger we were taught to suppress, the sadness we were never allowed to feel, the dreams we abandoned because they didn't fit the narrative. These fragments don't disappear, they wait. And at 40, they knock. At first, they show up subtly, through envy, restlessness, strange dreams, then louder, through emotional fatigue, existential doubt, or even illness. These are not enemies, they are signals. The shadow doesn't want to destroy you, it wants to be seen, to be reintegrated. Jung warned that those who refuse to face the shadow become trapped in projection, blaming others for the very qualities they refuse to see in themselves. But those who accept the invitation experience a different kind of power, a wholeness, a self no longer fragmented, because true maturity isn't about lightness, it's about integration, and the gold of the soul is buried in the soil of the shadow. If the first half of life is about building a life, the second half is about building a self. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, a sacred psychological journey of becoming who you truly are, beyond the expectations, beyond the masks, beyond the noise. Individuation is not a straight line. It is not clean, quick, or comfortable. It is a spiral, a deepening into authenticity. It requires courage, because to individuate, we must dismantle, question, reimagine, and above all, we must feel. This process often begins with confusion, a sense that what once made sense no longer does, but slowly, as we listen inward, something emerges, a new compass, a softer voice, the self. The self is not the ego. It does not seek applause, it seeks coherence, meaning, truth. Jung believed that the world doesn't need more perfect people, it needs more whole people. People who have made peace with their contradictions, who live from the inside out. This is the quiet revolution of the second half of life. Not to add more, but to become more of what was always there. It often begins quietly, not with a scream but a sigh, a weight in the chest, a disinterest in things that used to excite you. You go through the motions, work, family, responsibilities, but something has shifted. Like trying to tune into a radio station that once came through clearly and now plays only static. Carl Jung called this silent unraveling, the moment the soul begins to rise. You might not recognize it at first. You may call it fatigue, burnout, or just a rough patch. But deep inside, something ancient knows. This is no surface problem. It is not a phase. It is a signal. A call to step beyond the structures that once held your life together. Jung taught that the first half of life builds the ego, the outer world. We gather, we strive, we become what we are expected to be. But the ego, left unchecked, becomes a prison. When the soul has had enough, it will find a way to be heard. Sometimes it shows up as anxiety, with no clear cause. or depression that no success can soothe. Sometimes it's a sudden collapse of what seemed stable, relationships ending, careers crumbling. It's easy to see these as failures, but from the Jungian perspective, they are sacred interruptions, the soul refusing to be ignored any longer. He called this moment a spiritual emergency, a crisis of purpose, and it cannot be solved with productivity hacks or self-help mantras. It demands a descent into your story, into your wounds, into your truth. This breakdown is not punishment. It's a reordering, a recalibration toward your essence. The old you is disintegrating because it was never whole to begin with, and in its place, something wiser waits to emerge. There comes a moment, often quiet, always irreversible, when you catch your own reflection and realize you don't recognize yourself. The lines on your face may be familiar, but the person behind the eyes feels lost. This moment is not vanity, it is revelation. Carl Jung believed that our outer life is a mirror of our inner state. For decades, we polish the surface, status, beauty, success. But when the mirror cracks, we are forced to see beyond the surface. We are forced to ask, who am I, really? It is one of the most terrifying and liberating questions a human being can face. For some, this question arises in the aftermath of loss, of youth, of a role, of a loved one. For others, it comes in the quiet between triumphs, when the spotlight dims and the applause fades. But the question is the same: what remains when there's nothing left to prove? Jung saw this as a sacred reckoning, the time when the self begins to demand visibility, not in the eyes of others, but in your own. It's when the false selves we've clung to for survival, the provider, the achiever, the peacemaker, start to peel away, not to leave us empty, but to finally let our true face breathe. This process isn't clean, it's raw. Often we resist. We try to glue the mask back on. We distract ourselves with new goals, new lovers, new routines. But the mirror stays cracked, and through that fracture, the truth peers back. The truth that we are not who we thought we had to be. The truth that what we need is not perfection, but presence. And if you can meet your own gaze without flinching, you are already on the path to wholeness. By the time we reach 40, most of us have traveled thousands of miles, metaphorically and literally. We've built lives, formed families, chased ambitions. But somewhere along the way, we forget to look inward. We become tourists in our own soul. Jung described the second half of life as a pilgrimage, not a journey outward, but inward, a sacred return to the center. This path is not glamorous. There are no tour guides, no shortcuts, no clear destinations. What it asks of you is presence. What it offers is integration. To walk this road, we must begin shedding illusions, obligations, outdated dreams. We must learn the art of subtraction, because individuation isn't about adding more to your identity, it's about uncovering what was buried. On this inner pilgrimage, the landscape is emotional terrain, childhood wounds, unconscious beliefs, long-forgotten desires. We meet versions of ourselves we abandoned long ago. The artist, the wild one, the healer, the seeker. They were never gone, just waiting for the noise to quiet. The deeper we go, the more we realize nothing outside can give us what we've always been seeking. No title, no lover, no possession can replace the feeling of being aligned with your essence. Jung taught that this alignment is the true definition of meaning, not something imposed by society, but something forged in the fire of inner work. And when you touch that meaning, even briefly, life begins to feel different. Time slows, conversations deepen, priorities shift. This is the path back to yourself, not to the person the world applauded, but to the one who existed before the world told you who to be. In the rush of daily life, it's easy to ignore the faintest voice of the voice of the soul. It speaks in pauses, in dreams, in moments that feel inexplicably sacred. But when you reach midlife, something shifts. That voice doesn't just whisper anymore. It begins to call. Carl Jung believed that the soul has always been speaking. It's just that the first half of life is too loud. We drown it out with ambition, approval, responsibility. But eventually, the noise no longer satisfies, and we start to feel the pull towards silence, towards stillness, toward truth. This is not about religion or dogma. It's about resonance. It's about recognizing that something within you has been neglected, and it's time to come home. You may notice this shift in subtle ways: a renewed hunger for solitude, a yearning for nature, a need to simplify. The soul speaks through longing, through what moves you without reason. Art, music, a poem that makes you cry and you don't know why. That's the soul, knocking. But many of us resist. We don't trust silence. We've been taught that stillness is laziness, that introspection is indulgent. So we keep moving, faster, harder, trying to outrun the feeling that something essential is missing. Jung warned of this avoidance. He said, "What you resist persists and grows stronger in the dark, until one day you're forced to listen, not because you want to, but because you can't not." To listen to the soul requires courage, because the soul doesn't speak in goals or plans. It speaks in symbols, metaphors, emotions. You'll have to slow down, you'll have to feel, but in doing so, you'll begin to hear something profound, the truth of who you've always been. Not the version polished for public view, but the raw, wild, luminous core you tried to tame to fit in. And that voice? That is your life's real compass. Loss is the great initiator. By midlife, no one escapes it. We lose people, roles, dreams, our youth. Sometimes we lose our very sense of direction. And while the world may rush us to move on, Jung urged us to pause. Because he understood something most of us fear to face, that grief is a doorway. In his work, Jung compared the human soul to an alchemical vessel. Pain is the fire, and if we allow ourselves to endure that fire with presence, something astonishing happens. The ego begins to melt, and in its place, something new begins to take shape. Not a return to what was, but a transformation into what could be. But we must allow the pain to do its work, not avoid it, not disguise it, not numb it with distractions. The world will try to convince you that feeling deeply is weakness, that grief should be managed, contained, hidden. Jung taught the opposite. To feel is to be initiated. It is through our darkest moments that the self is forged. When we lose something we thought we couldn't live without, we are invited to discover something deeper inside us, something more enduring, more eternal. Loss strips us bare, but in that nakedness, we meet our most honest self, and often it's in the wake of that meeting that we begin to ask new questions. What really matters now? What parts of me have I been ignoring? What needs to die so something new can be born? Jung believed that suffering, if honored, becomes sacred, that in the ashes of what we thought we needed, we often find what we were truly seeking: purpose. Not the purpose that earns applause, but the kind that brings peace. Somewhere between your 40s and 50s, a quiet revolution begins. It doesn't happen with fireworks or grand epiphanies. It often happens on an ordinary morning. You wake up and for the first time, the life you've built no longer fits. Not because it's broken, but because you've outgrown it. Carl Jung called this the turning point, the shift from living by default to living by design. Before this point, we're mostly reactive. We make choices to fit in, to avoid pain, to meet expectations. We survive. But the second half of life asks something different. Not survival, but presence. Not conformity, but consciousness. At this turning point, many feel called to reinvent themselves, not out of boredom, but out of necessity. The old motivations, ambition, validation, accumulation, begin to fade. In their place, new values arise: simplicity, meaning, depth, connection. This transition is not about changing careers or moving to a new city, though those might happen. It's about changing the axis around which your life revolves. No longer around fear or lack, but around truth. Jung believed that when this inner shift happens, the outer life inevitably follows. We start saying no to what drains us. We stop tolerating relationships that diminish us. We become less willing to betray ourselves for the comfort of others. But this isn't selfishness, it's integrity. It's the realization that your life is not a performance, it's a pilgrimage, and every step counts. At this point, people often begin to glow in a different way. It's not youth, it's not beauty, it's authenticity. There's a peace in their eyes that doesn't come from having all the answers, but from having stopped pretending they do. This is not the end of your story. It's the part where you begin to write it for real. There comes a moment in every life when holding on becomes heavier than letting go. You feel it not in your thoughts, but in your bones, a tiredness that success can't soothe, a quiet revolt of the soul that says, I can't keep being this version of myself. Carl Jung called this moment the sacred descent. It is not a breakdown, it is not regression, it is initiation, a holy unraveling, the moment when the scaffolding of your identity, built over decades, begins to fall away. And it has to. Because what got you here is not enough to take you where your soul is going. This descent often begins with disillusionment. What once inspired you now feels dull. What once gave you purpose now feels hollow. It can feel like the world is dimming, but in truth, it's your ego that's dimming. And in the growing dark, the self begins to glow. Jung warned that this descent is not optional for those who seek truth. If you resist, you suffer. If you surrender, you transform. But the cost is real. You must release the roles that once defined you, the titles, the expectations, the identity so carefully curated. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you. And that's terrifying, because who are you without your story? The descent strips away your coping mechanisms. It confronts you with your shadows, your jealousy, your fear, your grief, all the parts you buried in order to survive. Now they rise, not to punish you, but to be seen, to be integrated, to finally come home. This process is not quick, it's not linear, it can take years. But every layer you peel back brings you closer to your essence. You begin to realize that you are not your resume, not your bank account, not your trauma. You are something older, deeper, wiser. And when you stop clinging to who you thought you had to be, you create space for who you really are to emerge, not in performance but in presence. This is the real descent, not into darkness, but into truth. What happens after the descent? What rises from the ashes of who you were? Carl Jung believed that if you had the courage to go down into your soul, something miraculous would happen. Not a return to your old self, but the birth of a new one. A self rooted not in performance, but in purpose. The self that rises is quieter. It doesn't chase, it doesn't compare. It doesn't need to be seen, it needs to be felt. Its presence is not loud, but unmistakable. You begin to live differently. You begin to feel, perhaps for the first time, that your life matters, not because others say so, but because it resonates with something sacred within you. This is the rebirth of meaning. It often begins with small things: waking up early to sit in silence, walking without headphones, saying no without apology, reconnecting with an old passion you abandoned for practicality, slowing down enough to actually taste your food, smell the morning air, hear your own breath. Jung said that meaning isn't found, it's created, grown, lived. It's not an idea, it's an experience. You don't think your way into meaning, you feel your way into it. And this is only possible when the ego loosens its grip and lets the self guide the way. Meaning arises when your inner world and outer actions align. When you stop living for applause and start living in integrity. When you no longer ask, what should I do? But instead, what is true for me now? In this rebirth, old fears return, but you are different now. You no longer need to impress. You no longer need to hustle for worth. You simply need to show up fully for the life that's been trying to reach you all along. And when you do, even the simplest moments begin to feel sacred. That is when life finally begins to make sense, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. You've climbed, you've collapsed, you've questioned, you've shed. Now something inside you is quieter, but it's not silence from defeat. It's the calm of return, the stillness of someone who has stopped running from themselves, the peace of someone who has, at last, come home. Carl Jung didn't believe in perfect people. He believed in whole people. Wholeness, he said, is not the absence of conflict, it's the integration of it. It's not about eliminating your flaws. It's about understanding them, holding them, learning from them. The mature soul knows that to be human is to be messy, inconsistent, full of contradiction, and yet still worthy of love. This is the end of the hero's journey. Not a grand finale, but a quiet arrival. You don't get a medal. You don't get clarity forever. What you get is your life back, raw, unfiltered, unmasked. You see the past with compassion, the future with curiosity, and the present with devotion. You stop measuring your value by how much you produce. You start honoring the richness of your being, the way you listen, the way you love, the way you inhabit even your most ordinary moments with presence. This is what Jung called individuation, the sacred unfolding of a life lived in alignment with the soul. And here's the truth. It's never too late to begin this journey. Not at 40, not at 60, not at 80, because the soul is timeless. It waits patiently beneath all the masks and noise and wounds, whispering, "Come back to me." And when you finally do, you realize something stunning. You were never broken. You were just buried. Now you are free. Now you are home. As we reach the culmination of our exploration into the profound insights of Carl Jung and the transformative journey that begins at 40, it's essential to reflect on the deeper currents that underlie our existence. Jung's perspective on the individuation process, wherein the self emerges from the shadows of the persona, resonates with the universal quest for meaning and authenticity. This journey, marked by introspection and the reconciliation of our inner conflicts, is not merely a psychological endeavor, but a spiritual awakening. In the tapestry of human experience, the age of 40 often signifies a pivotal juncture. It's a time when the illusions of youth give way to the sobering truths of maturity. The external pursuits that once defined our identity, career achievements, social status, material possessions, begin to lose their luster. In their place arises a yearning for something more substantial, more enduring. This is the call of the self, beckoning us to embark on a voyage inward, to confront our fears, embrace our vulnerabilities, and uncover the essence of who we truly are. Jung emphasized that this midlife transition is not a crisis to be feared, but an opportunity for growth. It's a chance to shed the superficial layers that have accumulated over the years and to reconnect with the core of our being. This process, though challenging, leads to a more integrated and harmonious existence. It's about aligning our actions with our values, our desires with our purpose, and our lives with our truths. In parallel, this journey mirrors a spiritual path that has been echoed throughout the ages. The quest for self-understanding and authenticity is deeply intertwined with the search for a higher power, a divine presence that offers guidance, solace, and redemption. It's in this context that the message of John 3:16 becomes profoundly relevant. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. This verse encapsulates the essence of divine love, a love so immense and unconditional that it transcends human comprehension. It's a love that offers hope amidst despair, light in the midst of darkness, and life in the face of death. Accepting this love requires a leap of faith, a willingness to surrender our ego-driven pursuits and to embrace a relationship with the divine. The journey toward individuation and spiritual fulfillment is not a solitary endeavor. It's a path illuminated by the experiences of those who have walked before us, guided by the wisdom of spiritual teachings, and enriched by the support of a community that shares our aspirations. Engaging with this community through dialogue, shared experiences, and mutual encouragement can provide the strength and inspiration needed to navigate the complexities of this transformative period. As we conclude this exploration, I invite you to reflect on your own journey. Are you at a crossroads, sensing the stirrings of change within? Do you feel the call to delve deeper into your psyche, to confront the shadows that linger, and to emerge with a renewed sense of purpose? If so, know that you are not alone. The path of self-discovery and spiritual awakening is one that many have traversed, and countless others are embarking upon. If this message resonates with you, I encourage you to take the next step. Engage with this community by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights and experiences can serve as a beacon for others who are navigating similar transitions. Moreover, if you feel compelled to explore the spiritual dimension of this journey further, consider opening your heart to the teachings of Jesus Christ. Embracing him as your Savior can provide a foundation of love, grace, and eternal hope that transcends the temporal challenges of life. It's an invitation to experience a relationship that offers not only personal transformation, but also a profound connection to the divine. In the words of John 3:16, the promise of everlasting life is extended to all who believe. It's a testament to the boundless love of God and a reminder that regardless of our past, we are all worthy of redemption and grace. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you find clarity, courage, and compassion as you continue to explore the depths of your being and the heights of your spiritual potential.